All right, so in our last set of notes, we talked about the two-party system. We talked about the history of the two-party system and why we have had one here in the U.S. For quite some time. So in this set of notes, we're going to start talking about other systems that European democracies use, like multi-party systems, one-party systems, and then we're also going to be looking at some party membership patterns and minor parties. All right, so multi-party systems. A multi-party system is where several major parties and many minor parties can exist in government and also compete for power. So those that favor a multi-party system in the United States believe that it would give voters a much more meaningful choice among candidates and policy alternatives than the present two-party system that we have. And again, this is, some of the reason as to why we see a multi-party system used in European democracies. These parties provide representation to the people and the electorate, or also known as the people who can vote. And then most modern parties are based on their economic class, political ideology, and religious beliefs. And by political ideology, they're just referring to their opinions or beliefs about government. So why have some Americans shunned the multi-party system here in the U.S.? Mostly because of single-member districts. With single-member districts, it's an electoral system, and it discourages voters from wasting votes on minor party candidates because it's a winner-take-all, a plurality system where you don't have to get the majority of votes, you just have to get the most. So it's kind of like first one to the post. And when you have a Democratic candidate, a Republican candidate, and then a minor party candidate, it's much more likely that the Republican or Democratic Party will get more votes before that minor party. And so most people say, what's the point? Why vote for this minor party candidate when the chances are very unlikely that they would actually get to the post first? And again, that's mostly because, the Democratic and Republican Party work together to keep it that way, to keep a two-party system. And also they have the financial backing and the political support that a minor party is just not going to have, unfortunately. So again, many Americans kind of just see it as a wasted vote. What's the point? Why bother? Another reason that we see a two-party system here in the U.S. and why we see Americans shun the multi-party system is because Americans actually agree on some of the fundamental issues like economic class, social status, religious belief, national origin. And because we agree on these fundamental issues, you don't see strong rival parties like you might see in other countries. Okay, other types of parties, again, single-member district. One candidate is elected to each office, and this is based on plurality votes, whoever has the most votes first to the post. Pluralistic society, a society consisting of several distinct cultures or groups. One-party system, only one political party is allowed, similar to a dictatorship. One-party systems can also be seen as no-party systems. Many states would be considered a one-party system because one political party dominates in that state year after year. In Ohio, typically the Republican Party has dominated. And as far as our nation, it's been split. However, now that Trump is president, it is dominated by the Republican Party and has been for some time, even before Trump. Coalition, several minor parties work together to create a functioning major party. This forces many different parties to have to work together within the government. Consensus agreements on certain subjects among different groups. Plurality. Again, this is just the largest number of votes cast for office, not necessarily majority. So again, they don't have to have more than half of the votes. They just have to have the largest number of votes. And then bipartisan, two major parties find common ground and work together. Democratic and Republican parties work together to keep the United States a two-party system, by shaping election law versus a multi-party system. And of course, this discourages minor parties from getting involved. Okay, party membership patterns. So membership in a party is purely voluntary. You can choose whether you want to be a part of the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, or any other party, or be independent. The two major political parties tend to be moderate, middle of the road, because they're election-based. Their primary concern is being elected or re-elected. And so they're not going to be too extreme on any issue because that will just lessen the amount of voters that they will gain. Individuals identify themselves with a party for many reasons. Family influence, major events like the Civil War and the Depression of 1930, economic status, so people with higher incomes tend to be Republicans, and those with lower incomes tend to be Democrats. Age, place of residency, level of education, work environment, and then, of course, many of the above can conflict with one another, leaving it very difficult to predict how a person or group will vote. All right, minor parties. So a minor party is a political party that plays a smaller, and in some cases much smaller, even insignificant in comparison, role than a major party in a country's politics and elections. And, typically they have very little electoral strength, meaning they do not get the support of the voters. All right, ideological parties. So ideological parties are a type of minor party. They typically are based on a set of particular beliefs. They want to change governmental structure altogether. Some examples of this would be socialists or libertarians. Libertarians believe in individualism. They call for doing away with most of government's present functions and programs. Overall, ideological parties seldom win many votes, but they have been long-lived. All right, single-issue parties. So single-issue parties are another form of minor party. They focus on one public policy issue or one issue that the people have and want addressed. Example would be Prohibition Party, which obviously focuses on making alcohol illegal, U.S. Marijuana Party, and then U.S. Pacifist Party. Some other examples of public policy issues would be minimum wage laws, public assistance programs, maybe the Affordable Care Act. And then, again, understand that public policy is just the laws, priorities, and governmental actions that reflect the attitudes and rules of the public. Public policy is not simply a law or regulation passed by the government. Instead, public policy actually encompasses the beliefs and attitudes that result in the passage of a law or regulation. Also, the U.S. Pacifist Party is just a party that advocates that war and violence are unjustifiable. Okay, Economic Protest Party. So again, another form of a minor party. Pop up when the economy is bad, do not have a clear-cut ideological basis, have proclaimed disgust for major parties, and focus their anger on real or imagined enemies. And examples would be the Populist Party of the late 1800s, which again we talked a great deal about in the course last year, American History course. Populist Party was a party that formed because the farmers were really struggling. They were in debt, and they wanted a silverback dollar, and they wanted the railroads to be regulated. And so they felt that forming a party and trying to get a candidate into office would be the best route in order to be heard. Unfortunately, William Jennings Bryan was not elected under the Populist Party when he ran for election. But again, this would be an example of an economic protest party where farmers were clearly protesting against the horrible conditions that they were suffering. As far as them focusing their anger on real or imagined enemies here, an example would be, Wall Street banks, the railroads. In the case of the Populist Party, could be foreign imports as well. Okay, splinter parties. Splinter parties break off from another party. Usually occur when someone does not receive his or her party's nomination and typically has a very strong personality. An example would be TR's Bull Moose Party. So he actually split away from the Republican Party when he did not receive the nomination and was known as the Progressive Party of 1912. So why are minor parties important? Minor parties can pull away votes from major parties, impacting the results. Minor parties can take controversial sides. There's nothing to lose. So they can be a little bit more honest, potentially. They also shed light on topics rather than focusing on winning the election. So they might be less election-based and more issue-based. Bringing those topics, some of these major issues that they kind of focus on to the public is really important because this makes them more aware, makes the public more aware of the issues and the fact that they need to be addressed. So some examples would be, women's suffrage, railroad and bank regulation, and the progressive income tax. These were all brought to light by minor parties and might not have been had they not formed.